Thank
have
you, Raquel. Thanks for inviting
any...
me. Thanks for the Star class. It's always a pleasure to connect with the Star community again and share some insights and hopefully help some people sail better.
Yes, so this series started with nothing else than your crew, Bruno. Well, your crew for the Olympic campaigns and for the Olympic Games and for 2 of your 5 medals, Robert. So let's just start. Then we dig into the Star class and you can help some people do better. But let's start with you a little bit, just to tell you how you are one of the most accomplished sailors in history of sailing. 5 Olympic medals, 3 in the lasers, 2 gold, 1 silver, and then 2 other Olympic medals in the Star, 1 silver and 1 bronze, and 7 Olympics in total. So let's just tell me, how important were the games in your life and in your career?
Yeah, well, the games is the pinnacle of every athlete's career, no? So since I was a boy, since I started sailing Optimist, I was already looking up to Olympic athletes and dreaming about participating in the games. I was watching the Grial brothers winning medals in 84 and 88, and I was thinking, oh, maybe one day I want to be there with these guys and get medals for my country. So I had this dream, a very deep dream in me as a young boy. And I just, I followed my road. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of effort, a lot of family help as well. So I think the family played a very important role of supporting me, follow my dream. And then, as everything, it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of effort, learning with the most experienced guys, great coaches, and just follow my path, follow my dream. And when I was 18, I managed to win my first Youth World Championship in the laser, and that was a very important moment for me because it gave me a lot of confidence and trust in myself, and I started to believe that I could really make it to the Olympics and do something big. And from then on, I also was lucky that I had a very good example. And Peter was 7 years older than me. He was the laser world champion in those years, and he was a guy who was very committed, very disciplined. So by traveling with him, going to regattas together, I learned a lot, and so it gave me a very good foundation. But most of all, I enjoy sailing. I love sailing. So it's not a job for me. It's not only about the result. I really enjoy going out there and feeling the wind, feeling the waves, for the pure joy of sailing. Of course, we're competitors. We like to do well in races. Once we commit to do a regatta, we want to win. Of course. But I also enjoy to just go out there and enjoy the feeling of being out on a boat.
Yes, and it couldn't be any different. But you're probably one of the, let's say, old generation sailors that actually started sailing as a true athlete. Because, let's say, the older generation from our age, for those guys, sailing was more on the talent, on the feeling. Instead, you started doing it really like an athlete, right? It was starting to change.
Yeah, well, once the laser became Olympic in 1996, I think there was a big shift. So people really started to do it on a full-time basis, committing a lot of time to the physical side. So the game started to change there, and the laser really rewards a very strong physical body, So if you're fit enough to endure long races, then you can use your mind better, not be super tired and sail better, and take 100% out of the boat. And I also, my background in other sports also helped with that. I played tennis until I was 16. I like to do swimming, bike riding, so I was naturally already a decently fit person. So, and my body type, allowed me to go in that direction. So, yeah.
Yes. And so we said it was 3 Olympic medals in the laser, something like 12 world championship in the laser. And then you went from the single-handed boat to a double-handed boat. How was that passage going from laser, where you could do everything by yourself? Of course, you had a coach, you had people around you, the family and everybody, this whole village helping you, but then you were making the decision by yourself on the boat. And then suddenly you're on the star class. It's not a laser, so it's not exactly a one design. You have to do adjustment, and then you have another person on board. How is that? How does it work for you?
Yeah, it is a big shift because the boats are different. You have, you're going from a small dinghy boat that weighs 60 kilos to a keel boat with a massive mainsail with a very uh, delicate mast, which requires a very fine tuning of the boat, and you need a strong crew, the communication with the crew, understand the technical part of sail development, so it is a full relearning, I would say.
Yes.
But I already, before I went into lasers, I already sailed double-handed boats in Brazil, the snipe class,
Okay.
which is let's say it's like a mini star. It has a whisker pole and two sails. You sail with a crew, front cooler, some tuning of the shrouds, the spreaders. So it was not something that I started from zero. I already had some experience in sailing double-handed boats. But then once we committed to do the campaign, I had to really find somebody who was on the same page as me. Like really wanted to make it to the games and have a serious shot at winning a medal. So Bruno was obviously my number one choice because I
Mhm.
knew him well. We had a good bond together, a good friendship. We sailed since the Optimist together. We went to lasers, then he went to Finn. So we had a good talk in the beginning. I said, yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard. And there's a lot of learning ahead of us, but let's take the challenge. And at that moment in my career, I felt I needed a new challenge because I had done uh, everything that I wanted in the laser. So it was time to find something new, to have a new experience and learn new things and develop my skill in other areas. So it was a good moment to do that shift, and very glad I committed those 10 years to start sailing. I learned a lot.
Yeah, so you were one of the first to switch from sailors to athlete, and then you were one of the first to switch from a double-handed boat where actually the mind is in the skipper and the athleticism is in the crew. Here, you started the new era where you are sharing the mental part as well, where the crew is not just a weight, but it's actually your partner in that regatta. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a very important point, Raquel, because Bruno is also an excellent skipper. He has sailed himself many important events. He's a Pan American Games medalist, top 10 at the Finn Worlds, and many other important results in a single-handed boat. So when we sailed together, I knew that I had another very intelligent brain in the boat, so I could profit from that. And there are those days in any boat that you don't feel so sharp. So having a crew that is a good sailor also helps a lot in the decision making. Helps a lot with seeing the wind, the positioning of the other boats, and just two brains think better than one. I was also always a guy who liked to hear what the other person is thinking, and I would make the final call, but I was always interested to share the decision making and to consult with him when I was in doubt about something. So I was lucky that I had this skills in Bruno, and he was also very committed to making to the games, because when we joined, he was already married. He already had 2 kids, so he had a family. So it was a big commitment for him to do a full-time campaign with me.
Yes, of course. So this is something very particular about the star class. It's a team sport because it's 2 people. It's very physical, it's very mental, and it's very technical because, like you said, there is fine-tuning on board. So it's a very complete sport, a very complete sailing boat and sailing class. And when you started as a young well, not so young because you already had your laser experience, but when you started star class, who were your meet, and were you able to talk to them and learn from there? And what have you learned from experienced sailors, and what have you had to figure out yourself?
Yeah, well, the funny thing about the star is that once you start, you don't overthink the tuning too much. You just want to go out and sail as if it was a dinghy boat.
Okay.
And so you just read the tuning guide, you go out there, tune your rig, you go out there as if it was any other boat, and usually you do well in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to get better, and you start to say, okay, I know this, so I'm going to go with my numbers. And then you start to get in a down spiral again. So then you have to create your own method and start over and really understand the mass tuning, the sails, the forces in the boat. And then you start to get better again. But it's you have to go through this cycle. It happens very often. But we were lucky. I mean, in the beginning, we struggle a little bit with boat speed. We're very fast downwind, but we're not fast upwind.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the class is very friendly, So guys like Mark Reynolds from Quantum, George, Vince Brun, these guys were always very open with us. So whenever we had doubts about, what should I do in this and that condition, Mark was always replying to my emails and saying, hey, this is the way to go, do this, do that. So I was always very appreciative of the community of the Star, because they were always very, very open, very friendly. There is a will to help young guys coming in the class. So we went through that process, and then finally we had some good early training sessions in Europe with Mateus. Andy Zevia was our coach us for some time, Polish coach, very, very strong ideas, but he taught us a lot. So we did a few sessions with him, and then we started to create our own tuning methods, and we started slowly to get better. But it's with the Star, it's interesting because it feels like you never really got all the answers. It's a boat that there's always something, some extra speed to take out of, and every day the conditions are changing, and so there's always a little tweak that you can do with your rig or with your sails, or the way you trim the boat, the way you sail the boat, to make it a little bit faster. So it's an endless game. And what I think is important is to kind of create a method and
Mm-hmm.
and have kind of prefix setups, and then once you change with wisdom, one thing at a time, test it, and never really go with new equipment or something that you don't know in a very important regatta. That happens very often too. People try to find an edge and they go with equipment that they don't know in a big event, and usually that's a recipe for not good results. So always go with what you know.
This is a very important piece of advice, I think. But with the Sea program by Schoonmaker, now so many young sailors are actually entering the Starfleet. What do you think, other than this last piece of advice, what would you think it's an important thing that you learned and that you would like to pass on, because maybe you wish when you were starting that they would have told you something important, like you said, among the other things you already said.
Yeah, I think it's important to not fight the boat. It is a very big and powerful boat, and with a big mainsail, with a lot of power in the rig. So the tendency is for people to go and fight the boat instead of understanding the forces on the boat. So I think once you go out for a sail, the boat will give you signals of either too
Mhm.
much power or too little power, of too much helm, too little helm, and the crew and the skipper can feel all these signs and these forces. And then you start to understand what's going on, and then you start to create the solutions. Or if you don't find the solutions, you talk to more experienced guys who will help you find the solution. But for us in the beginning, I was coming from the laser, Bruno was coming from the fin, and in the early days, we were fighting the boat a lot. We were like trying to hike like crazy, and without having the right setup on the boat. So it's important to hear the signals that the boat's giving you. This is more important than the actual numbers on a tuning guide or something like this.
I like this. I like this, and I've never heard before, so I like it even more because it makes sense. A big rig, a big keel, and a heavy boat, slow, but then inertia as well. So I get it. I get it. Thank you, Robert. And these young sailors, these young kids nowadays, they have such a big offer. You at your time already had a big offer, but nowadays, even with the foiling boards, you know something about it because you have it in the family with your son Eric. I mean, they can go from windsurf to wind foil to wing foil to kite foil, and then also do something old school like the star. So me personally, I think that sailing is such a great sport because it's all of this, and I would like a kid to try all of this. What is your opinion, and what do you
Exactly.
think the star could give to a young 14-year-old sailor like your son Eric?
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think the greatness of this sport is that there's it's such a broad, sport. You can do so many different types of sailing. I mean, I can go and sail a big boat that with 15 people, and the next day I can be wing foiling on my own. So this is amazing, and I think there's a place for everything. And I agree with you. I think we should encourage the new generation to try all the types of sailing that is possible, everything that is available. I think the more you do, the more overall knowledge you have about boats, sails.
Yes.
I mean, communication with crews, tactical skills, surfing waves. Because in the end, slow boats that go more or less the same speed as the waves. There's a lot of technique involved with all those the surfing skills and staying on the wave or connecting the wave or keeping the pressure on your sail, not oversteering. So all these things you get from sailing a big boat. Plus, you understand the concept of building the speed and keeping the speed, and this boats have a lot of momentum. No, the Star has a lot of inertia, a lot of momentum. So learning to sail a keel boat is very different than sailing a smaller boat. But once you are fully tuned with the boat and you understand it, you can sail as if it was a dinghy. That's how we did it in the end. Once we learn how to sail a Star well, we would push it hard as if it was a laser. But I totally agree, and I think the Star has also another magical thing, which is you can sail if you are 15 years old or if you're 80 years old, and you can compete against the big names of the sport. You can go out there and do a Bacardi Cup against Paul Kayard or Torben or Mateus, all those big names, and you can be 16 years old. So having this opportunity to sail and feel these guys on the course and see how they race, how old school racing is, and you can learn a lot with them. And I think it's a very good cross training. Even if you go for fast boats later in your life, I think this knowledge that you get will be very helpful for the future.
I agree. I think the Star is a very school. It's a very boat for teaching skills. And like once I remember I was speaking to somebody in the NACRA class, so the very fast boat, and they say, "Well, we don't have time to think." Okay, but then they realize that not thinking with the fast boat would take the mistake, if they made a mistake, so much further ahead. In the Star, you have time to think, but the difference is that you can also adjust better it's slow, but then if you make a mistake, you can slowly adjust and get back into the game, right, Robert? It's something with the new foiling boats, they're too fast that you think you cannot think, and the Star maybe can teach you that. There's a lot of thinking on board the Star.
I think I've sailed a year in a 49er class, and I think the biggest difference is that once you make like a big call, like a jibe set at the top mark in a 49er, and you are wrong, things happen very quickly. So you can go from winning the race to being 20th in a race in a minute. Whereas in the Star, if you make a mistake, maybe instead of losing 20 boats, maybe you lose 3 or 4 boats. So things happen. The mistake will cost you, but it will not happen on a fast pace as if it happens in a big NACRA or 49 or any high performance boat. But thinking and looking ahead is important in every boat, like overstanding ley lines or doing low percentage moves. This is valid for every class, even the kite foilers that go now at 35 knots. There is probably a good playbook and a high percentage move, a low percentage move, what works, what doesn't work on those classes. So I like to think like that. I like to always try to understand what are the moves that usually work, and I would try to go for that unless I see something very special doing something different. Then I'll go and do something different as the fleet is doing. But thinking, looking ahead, and I mean, it's a bit like a chess game, your opponent does one move, and what's your counter move? So looking forward in the race and trying to be one step ahead of the competition is really important. But also doing that at the same time as sailing fast, because there's no substitute for boat speed. Once you are fast, then the race becomes tactically a lot easier. So that's why it's so important to commit time to go out and train, prepare your boat, prepare yourself, prepare your sails, prepare the tuning. So if you have some boat speed edge on the competition, then the game become very, very a lot of fun and
easier
and becomes a lot easier as well.
Yeah. So I have one last technical questions. Nowadays, most of the Olympic classes are running a 20-minute race. The whole of the sailing world is going in that direction, faster races, more races. While the Star class is sticking to tradition, and at the Worlds or at the Europeans, at the silver events, the championship, at the Worlds specifically, we have a leg that is 2 miles long. So we have races that last up to 2 hours. So does that change the way you put the strategy together? So strategy is one thing, and then there is the tactical part that is another thing. How would you suggest they approach a 2-hour race?
Yeah, I think the first thing is the size of the starting line. So if you have a big fleet with a 2 mile upwind, it means that the start line is probably huge as well. So if you start on the unfavored, unbiased side of the line, you're already way behind. And any kind of shift that you have in the beginning of the race makes a big impact on the whole race. So I think it's very important to put a lot of emphasis on the where you want to start, what the wind's going to do, and trying to be on the favored side of the line with free wind, a free lane. Let's put it like this, because if you can sail the beginning of the race with a clear air and taking 100% out of your boat, you're going to be ahead of most of the boats. Mm-hmm. And then I think that's also very important to keep a high level of concentration, because the race is very long and there's a lot of opportunities, because even once you're done with the top mark, there's a huge downwind, there's a second upwind, second downwind, and maybe a third upwind even. So the race is really long, and you should never give up, because there's going to be plenty of room to come back in races like that. People will make mistakes. There's things going to happen. A lot of shifts are going to happen in a 2-mile beat. I mean, there's so many shifts, oscillations that can happen, so many position changes. And us as Brazilians, we develop a very good skill in sailing downwind. So we always, even if we made mistakes, sometimes upwind, we had the ability to come back on the downwinds. And we also love the reaches, which nowadays we don't do so often, but I love the races that we did in the Star, which had the triangle, the really old school triangle, which also in a big breeze had a lot of technique involved, and then there was a lot of room to catch up, gain places on the reaches.
So Robert, thank you for all your advices you gave to young sailors, but also to not so young sailors who want to improve their skills. So when are we going to see you back on a Starfleet? We miss you.
Yeah, I'm here in Brazil, and there's always races here going on, and I'm probably pretty sure still this year going to do a few races, local regattas, and I really miss the Star, because it's a lovely boat to sail. Had so much power. You can go sailing in 5 knots of wind and have a lot of fun. And I have a lot of friends around here that are sometimes calling me to race. So I will take these opportunities and maybe one day go back to do a big one, maybe a Star Worlds. Why not? I took some time off the Star, and did this. We did those years of the SSL, which were great too. It was good to go back and race in a beautiful place against the top names. Unfortunately, we don't have it anymore, but the Star class lives in my heart, and I really look forward to sail this boat.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raquel, and all the best for the young guys who are starting. Enjoy your sailing, and I'm always open to help with any tips or whatever you want. Enjoy the sailing, guys.
Thank you, Robert.